Hi, boys and girls. This is the second part of the video about how to convert fractions to decimals. Now, in this part of the video, what I wanted to show you is the phone battery again. And this time my phone battery is 100% charged, just like before, at the very beginning. But this time, I divided my phone battery, instead of into 10 parts, into 8 parts. So there's 8 different parts here. That means my fraction is now going to be 8 as my denominator. Since my phone is 100% charged up right now, all 8 parts are filled in. That means that my fraction right now is 8 over 8, and my decimal is just going to be 1. It's 1 whole. That's pretty obvious right there. Now the question that comes up is, since this denominator is not 10 or 100 or 1,000, how do I change it into a decimal when the fraction starts to get lower? So when the fraction is no longer just 1 whole, when my phone starts to lose some charge to it, let's see the decimals start to change. Here's a great example right here. Right now, my phone is not 100% charged anymore. So my phone is a little bit running down now. My percent is 87.5%. It's almost charged, but not quite. It's a part of it is now not charged anymore. And that means that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts of my phone are charged, but 1/8 of it is not charged. So my fraction of charged battery is 7/8, 87.5%, and the decimal is 875 thousandths. Now the question is, how do we turn this fraction 7/8 into this decimal? How did we get this decimal? We can't turn this 8 into a 10 or 100 or 1,000 by multiplying. So how do we do it? How do we turn this fraction into a decimal? I'm going to go ahead and show you right now. Let's go ahead. I'm going to put this fraction 7/8 over here on my paper. And I'm going to show you the steps to convert a fraction into a decimal. What I'll do is I'm going to just full screen this so you can see a little bit better what I'm going to be doing here. So let me take that over to here and there, erase that little dot. So now I'm going to be converting a fraction to a decimal. The fraction we want to convert in is 7/8. And the key to converting a fraction into a decimal when the decimal or the denominator is not 10, not 100, or not 1,000 is to divide. We're going to be dividing the numerator, which is the number at the top. We're going to divide the numerator by the denominator. The numerator is going to be going in a dividing box. The numerator goes inside, so that 7 goes inside the dividing box. The denominator, which is 8, is going to be going on the side as the divisor. And that is probably the most important thing to remember about converting a fraction to a decimal is you're going to divide by putting the numerator inside the dividing box and putting the denominator over on the side as the divisor. Once you've got that, it's just a matter of dividing. Let's go and do that right now. I'm going to turn my paper sideways, and then I'm going to be taking another dividing box, and this always helps to divide sideways when you're dealing with decimals to help line up everything. My numerator, if you remember, and I'll just show it back here, was 7. 7's going in the dividing box as my numerator. I'll put that into here, 7. My denominator was 8, and that was going on the outside of the dividing box as my divisor. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'll put my 8 on the outside as my divisor. Now I'm ready to divide. What I'll do first is I'll take a look at 7. Well, 8 times 1 is 8, so that's too big. 8 times 0 is all I can do here. 8 times 0 is 0. I'm going to subtract 7 minus 0, and I'm going to end up with 7 again. Now, I have a remainder, obviously, but because I'm going to be converting a fraction into decimals, I want to go ahead and start adding some zeros and converting this into a decimal. And I do that by starting by putting a decimal after the 7. I move the decimal up so that my decimal dot is also in my quotient line right next to the 0. By doing that, I'm ready to start annexing some zeros. I'll add 1 0 after my decimal, and I'll drop it down so now my 7 becomes 70. Now I can multiply 8 times something to find a number close to 70, and that's going to be 8. 8 times 8 is 64. I'm going to subtract now. 70 minus 64 is 6. Now, boys and girls, I have a remainder, and I'm going to annex another 0 so I can keep on dividing until I get to no remainder. Now, there are going to be times when you're going to get a decimal where you're going to be getting a remainder even when you get all the way out here to the thousandth place. If you go that far, stop at the thousandth place and just round from there. Well, let's keep on going and see if we need to do that for this example. I'm going to take the annex 0 that I just added, drop it down so 6 becomes 60. And I know that 8 times 7 is going to equal 56, which is close to 60. And I'm going to subtract 60 minus 56, and I'm going to get 4 as my remainder. Well, I'm not at the thousandths place yet, so I'm going to annex a 0 because I've got a remainder here. And I'm going to drop down that additional 0 that I annexed down to here. Now I'm going to take 8 times something to get 40. Well, I know that math fact. 8 times 5 is 40. So what I'll do now is I'll take 8 times 5 and I'll make 40 and subtract 40 minus 40. And now I have a remainder of 0, which is good. I stopped at the thousandth place and I don't have a remainder. So now I know what my decimal is. 7/8 is going to equal, as a decimal, 0 and 875 thousandths. Be careful, boys and girls. The 7/8 right here don't relate to the fact that this is 875 thousandths. That's just a coincidence. So don't try to use these numbers and form a decimal out of them. It won't work. So I'll go up here and write 7/8 is equal to 0 and 875 thousandths. I'm going to show you one additional example, boys and girls, to show you when you may need to round sometimes to the nearest thousandth place. And I'll show that to you next. Okay, boys and girls, in this part of the video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happens when sometimes the decimal, when you divide, goes past the thousandth place. What do? Let me show you that right now. In this example, what I did is I showed my phone battery as partially charged. It has 8 parts that are charged and 3 parts that are not charged. So at this point, my fraction is 8/11, or as a percent, 72.73% charged. The decimal, as you can see, is going to be going past the thousandth place. And I want to show you what you do in those situations when you're dividing and the decimal goes out past the thousandth place. Let's go ahead and show you. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'm going to take 8, that was my numerator, and I'm going to divide it by, or I'm going to then put down my denominator, which is 11. Now the key to converting a fraction to a decimal is dividing the numerator. The numerator goes, and I kind of think of it as like jumping into a pool. The numerator jumps into the pool. The denominator comes on over to see what's going on. My numerator goes inside the dividing box. My denominator comes over to the side to look. Now that I have that set up, I can do it sideways, and I'll start dividing. I want to go until I have no remainder or I get to the thousandth place. I'm going to put my 8 inside the dividing box. My 11 is going to go outside. First thing I do is I see that 8 is smaller than 11, so I'm definitely going to start off with a 0. 11 times 0 is 0. I subtract, and I end up with 8 again. I'm going to now add a decimal point and bring it on up and put it right next to my 0. When I do that, boys and girls, I now can annex some more zeros so I can start to divide longer. I'll go ahead and write down a 0 right next to my 8 decimal dot. drop it down so the 0 goes right next to the 8 remainder, and that 8 becomes 80. Well, I can't take 11 times 8, but I can do 11 times 7 to get 77. When I subtract, I get 3 as my remainder. Now, since I'm only at the 10th place right now, I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to annex another 0. So annex a 0, drop it down next to my 3 remainder, and my 3 becomes 30. I can't do 11 times 3 to get 33, but I can do 11 times 2 to get 22. Now I'm going to take 30 minus 22, and that's going to leave me with a remainder again of 8. I'm at the hundredths place in my quotient, so I want to still keep on dividing by annexing the 0, drop it down, that becomes 0, or that 0 becomes 80. Now I know before I took 11 times 7 to get 77, I'll do that again here. 11 times 7 is 77. I'll subtract 80 times minus 77, and I end up with 3 as a remainder. Now, boys and girls, I am here at the very end, having a remainder. I'm at the thousandths place. What I want you to do is I want you to take out I want you to add another 0. One more 0 here. And we're going to drop it on down. We're going to look, and oh, it's 30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and think to myself, well, 11 times 2. We had that before. 11 times 2 is 22. So I'm going to do that, and I end up with a remainder of 8 again. And this is going to keep on going. So what I want to do now is I want to stop. I want to stop at the 10 thousandths place, and I want to use that to round my thousandths place. I'm going to look here at the thousandths place, which is the 7, and I'm going to look at the 2. 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. Well, 2 is less than 5. So 4 or less, let it rest. So that means I'm going to just cross it out. I'm not going to use it. My denominator, or my decimal, will be then 0 and 727 thousandths. If you notice in the model I drew or showed you a little bit earlier, they went to 0 and 720 or 7,273 10,000ths. We don't have to go that far. Just stop at the thousandths, go one more to round, and then use this as our rounded decimal. So now we know that 8 over 11 is going to equal 0 and 727 thousandths by stopping at the thousandths place. If you have any questions about this, you go ahead and email me. This should give you enough to start with today's assignment for Tuesday, converting fractions to decimals. Thank you, boys and girls.